Hot hatchbacks are going for some serious money these days. There was a time where hot hatches were supposed to be cheap and cheerful. Now you're getting them for like over 50 grand. It's insane. For long term, those prices do depreciate, and today I'm going to talk to you about 5 in particular that depreciated quite quickly over the last few years. If you are new here, hit subscribe. 77% of you are not subscribed, so I'd really appreciate it. Hit the like button as well if you want to see more videos on hot hatchbacks. Let's get straight into it. Let's kick this video off with arguably the best hot hatchback on the list in terms of out-and-out hot hatch formula and performance, the Honda Civic Type R from the FK8 or 10th generation Civic. This Civic set the front-wheel drive lap record at the Nürburgring with a time of 7 minutes 43 seconds before being beaten by the Megane RS Trophy R, and it had the front-wheel drive record at Suzuka by over 1.5 seconds before being beaten again by the following Type R generation. To achieve this performance, these come with a 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 engine which makes 315 brake horsepower, taking them to 60 in 5.6 seconds, which is pretty decent for a front-wheel drive car. And in terms of depreciation, this is both the slowest depreciating annually and least depreciated car on this list, despite being the second oldest. Brand new, these would have been just under £43,000 adjusted for inflation back in 2017, yet today they're listed anywhere from around £21,000, with 30k getting you a 2020 model with 23,000 miles on the clock. That means just under 51% depreciation total, or just over 7% annual depreciation. Even though the Civic isn't always spoken about in the hyper hatch conversation, I genuinely think it should be, given its track performance and its super aggressive looks. The angular features, everything it has to increase aero, it's far more visually striking than most other hot hatches on the market. Add on all that power just going through the front wheels, and I think it's definitely in hyper hatch territory. The interior on them is also pretty nice, with classic Type R features like the red seats and other red features, but focus really is on the driver. These Type Rs are all about driving pleasure. If you're after one, watch out for crunches between first and second gear, and at pace between third and fourth. They're pretty low too, so damage on these splitters is common, and fuel pumps have caused some starvation. In the history of hot hatchbacks, there are no 3 letters more important than GTI. Whether it's a GTI from Peugeot or VW, it's an iconic 3 letters that serve as a stark reminder for what hot hatches are really all about. It's all well and good having something fast, but it has to handle like a hot hatch too. More on that a little later in this video. That for me is what the Golf GTIs have consistently done though, maybe except for the 4th generation, as the front-wheel drive B-road bashing sporty hatches that have captured the imaginations of car people since the Mark I first hit the roads back in the mid-70s. The one we're on about in this video, however, is the 8th generation Golf GTI released in 2019 that still tries to retain a portion of what that Mark I was. The engine, however, is pretty typical of modern hot hatches, a 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 which makes 241 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 6.2 seconds, more in warm hatch territory today, but still more than enough pace for a bit of fun, and it's also more in line with how hot hatches should be, focused on handling rather than being useful at Santa Pod. In terms of depreciation, this is the newest car on the list, but it's also depreciating most rapidly at 13.5% annually or 54% total. That's because today you can find them listed anywhere from around £22,000, with 30k getting you a 2022 model with 10,000 miles on the clock. When adjusted for inflation, these would have been £48,000 back in 2020. Aesthetically, they're very similar to the GTE, just with GTI specific alloys and the typical badging and red accents. You also get more tech to help adjust the suspension setup and the typical GTI upholstery. Basically it's a GTI but as modern as you can get. Some early models had DSG issues, and owners have mentioned a couple of small issues with infotainment failing and the likes, but all in, as they're pretty new, catastrophic common problems are pretty few and far between. I drove the 1st generation Mercedes A45 AMG S recently thanks to the lovely team down at Motorland, and I'll be honest, I was a bit disappointed. The A45 is the car that really set the standard, according to media publications, of what a hyper hatch is or should be. It said that the 240 brake horsepower of the Golf GTI wasn't enough, that cheap and cheerful doesn't exist, and instead mad power and more money gets you more fast, and therefore more hyper. But in my books, the 1st gen missed the mark around quality, with an interior that looks great but leaves a lot to be desired in terms of finish and even performance, as outside of that shunt from all the power, I can't say it was the best handling hot hatch I'd been in. All of that being said, most reviews will still tell you that the second generation A45 was a significant step forwards in all departments, and there is no disputing that it is mind-bendingly quick thanks to that 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 block, which makes 415 brake horsepower, smashing everything on this list to 60 in a time of 3.8 seconds. That's serious performance out of a hatchback, and even the non-S puts out 382 brake horsepower. In terms of depreciation, adjusted for inflation when new 5 years ago, these would have run you just under 63k, by far the most expensive car on the list, but today you'll find them anywhere from around £27,000, and they actually don't often appear within our 30k price range. That's just under 57% price loss so far, or 11.4% annually. This second generation A45, like the first, has an absolutely stunning interior with a slightly better overall finish, and most importantly, you don't have to have that horrid faux carbon fibre on the dashboard. I am a big fan of the ASBO kit too. I don't see any reason to not have it, as it's a big part of making it at least look like the hyper hatch it's supposed to be. These are slightly too new to really talk about the reliability, but the previous generation did suffer from some gearbox and build quality issues like squeaks and rattles. So I hope you guys are enjoying this video. If you are, then do hit the like button and subscribe as well if you're new. As I said, 77% of you are not subscribed who are watching right now. And if you had to buy one brand new hot hatchback right now, what would it be? Taking second on the list, we have the BMW M135i from the most recent generation 1 series, which means the most controversial 1 series I could have chosen. This controversy basically comes from two factors. One, the engine, which we'll get onto, and two, the looks, which have been criticised for that quite prominent grille. Basically, a lot of people think it's a bit ugly. I do think they've gotten better looking with age, but I'll be honest, I do also think the previous generation M135 and M140i's are a bit better looking overall, but that's just my opinion though, so feel free to ignore. But when it comes to the engine, just as Audis are known for inline 5s, Alphas for their V6s, and Ferraris for their V12s, BMWs are known for their inline 6s. So it did upset quite a few BMW purists to see the flagship hot hatch for the brand had gone the way of the 2-litre turbocharged inline 4, like the ones you'll find in most hot hatches, which makes 301 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 4.6 seconds. If that wasn't enough, BMW took another step away from what they're good at and known for, making the car all-wheel drive instead of rear-wheel drive. I assume trying to compete with cars like the Golf R and Audi RS3, but this decision again wasn't to everyone's taste in the BMW world. I think these many controversies have added to the depreciation, as though this car would have been around 51k new 5 years ago adjusted for inflation. Now they start at around 21k, with 30k getting you a 2023 model with 17k on the clock. That's a drop of just under 59% in value, or 11.76% per year. Pretty aggressive. You benefit from a nice LSD, big M Sport brakes, and some chassis stiffening to get it turning and stopping well, adding into that extra pace. In 2022 they got some further suspension tweaks too, coming with a slight facelift. And given they're so new, some sensor and braking in issues are all owners seem to have mentioned on forums. Taking the top spot on this list thanks to its depreciation is of course the Audi RS3 from the third generation A3, though this is of course only the second generation of the RS3 after the previous generation got an RS3 post facelift. Obviously we're on about the hot hatch sportback version in this video, but it also came as a saloon if you're that way inclined, and to be fair, I actually think the saloon is a better looking car overall despite being a big hot hatch fan. The RS3 arrived in 2015 just before the 2016 facelift, and both examples are very much available within our price range for this video, given this is currently the cheapest car on the list, helped by the fact that it's also the oldest. These start at around £18,000, with 30k being enough for a 2017 model with around 24,000 miles on the clock. That means since its release, these have dropped by around 66% in value. Given adjusted for inflation, they would have been just over 53k new. It's now actually the second slowest depreciating car for reference, slightly faster than the Civic, but it's a lot quicker than the Civic to 60, despite likely being slower around the Nürburgring, given it has a 2.5-litre turbocharged inline-5 engine, making 361 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 4.2 seconds, and it sounds amazing doing it. I love that inline-5. Depending on preference, brand new, these either came with mag ride or fixed suspension, as well as a whole bunch of other optional packages like the black optic package that blacks out all of the trim. I think if you're after one, you should aim to get the facelift, as the front end styling is based off the newer R8 aesthetics, and the interiors on them are super clean too, typically minimalist Audi, and I'm a big fan of those diamond stitched massive comfortable sports seats. Oil consumption, fuel pump failures, and electrical issues are the ones most owners seem to shout about on forums, as well as MAF sensor issues. So there you have it, 5 depreciated hot hatchbacks for under 30k. I hope you enjoyed. Do hit like and subscribe if you did. Big thanks to patrons for their support, and to you guys as well for watching, and click here to check out a nice hot hatchback review.